And we are live. Hi, this is Anya. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here today to talk with one of my friends, the author of Midnight in Jubilation. So, JD, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. So for those who don't know me, my go by JD or my author name of Dorian Blackwood. My pronouns are they, them. I am coming to you from the rather frosty, chilly Ngunnawal country, the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, and acknowledge elders past and present and their ongoing connections to the land and waters.
Very cool. Also, from Australia,
G'day.
because you didn't say that.
That's true. The obligatory g'day, mate.
Exactly. So yeah, we're here today to talk to you about Midnight in Jubilation, your new solo journaling game that is coming to Pocketopia this year. So first of all, tell us just the gist about the game, like how you play it, basics, the theme, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Midnight in Jubilation, as you already said, solo horror game designed for journaling. It's got an urban horror setting, bit of eldritch horror, bit of cosmic horror, bit of magic, bit of science fiction, a little bit of kind of all of my favorite things about the horror genre overall. It's a really, I would say, beginner friendly system. You only need about 4d6 maximum to play. And the d6 realistically are, to make the stats for your radio presenter because you are playing as Jubilation's newest overnight radio presenter. All of the game's action takes place at night. So it's a setting where, your character might never feel the sun on their face. And strange things happen in the town of Jubilation at night. The boundaries of reality grow thin, the population almost triples. And yet, the locals all seem determined to act like everything is completely normal. They go about their business and they definitely don't question the things that are going on around them. You, as an outsider, on the other hand, have a lot of motivation to kind of question what's going on, namely in the interests of self preservation, because you are not a hero. You are not even strictly a good person in the, nicest sense of the word. You are a flawed individual who has a vice. It is an addictive, self destructive behavior that you engage in because what is it you crave? What is it you desire? And what are you willing to do to get it? These are all the kinds of questions that inform your play. Uh, the game is based on the Passkey system by Penflower Inc. It is a really, really beginner friendly, very narrative heavy system, pretty much designed for narrative focused games with a lot of player agency. So, in this system, you have the choice whether you spend what's called effort points to guarantee a certain amount of success, or whether you leave it to a roll of the dice. But to kind of make things a bit interesting for the horror sort of setup, I've also added a whole ton of different mechanics to it. So you have harm to help sort of track the damage your character takes physically, mentally, socially as well.
Ooh.
You can be hurt just as easily by someone's social slight as you can by a monster's claws or something else sinister. So you also have, I think anyone who also loves games like Call of Cthulhu will recognize a very similar mechanic in Cope, which is your character's ability to cope with stress. Some encounters will rob you of that. Some encounters you can kind of choose, is this beyond your character's ability to cope with it? Uh, and of course, motivation for your vice. If you indulge in your vice during a scene, you automatically restore all of your cope, but your vice gets more severe. And the more severe your vice gets, the stronger the narrative impacts are on the game. And that's kind of
That
it in a little
is
bit of a
cool.
nutshell.
A little bit of a nutshell, yes. No, I love that so much. So I'm getting, keeping in mind, of course, that I've only listened to the first couple of episodes, but the Night Vale podcast, I'm getting a little bit of vibes of that, but much, much creepier. Is that about
It's the
right?
funniest thing. It is, I would say, very much if you enjoy Night Vale, you will definitely love Midnight in Jubilation. But the funniest thing is I didn't really listen to the show when it came out.
Yeah.
My friends were obsessed with it, so I would hear, like, little bits and pieces, and I didn't realize it even kinda had horror elements to it because they would only tell
Ah,
me, like, the
yeah.
funny bits. Uh,
Hmm.
it actually was inspired by a horror movie I tried to watch back in the day called Pontypool. It
Okay.
is a small town horror set in a radio station. It's based on a book by Tony
Okay.
Burgess called Pontypool Changes Everything. If you want a really unique take on the zombie genre, I would 10 out of 10 recommend. Also, it's
Mm.
terrifying. I could not sit through the whole movie. Um, it surprises people because I love horror games. I live and breathe horror games, but I'm so weak to horror movies.
I mean, honestly, I'm very, very similar. Like, I love all of the psychological horror things. I break a little bit with things like zombies and things like that. I cannot handle them whatsoever. Like, what do you mean this disease? Because zombies are often treated as like a disease or something like
Mm.
that has changed the person that you know so that they're not your person anymore. Like, it breaks my heart.
I will say there's probably one monstrous encounter in my game that would make you very, very sad then, but I had a lot of fun adding it in because apart from the fact
Okay.
that you have I've written in about 18 different NPCs that you can interact with, but there's
Okay.
also a mechanic in the game called threats. So these
Mm,
are dangers that your character has to face. They can be social, environmental, psychological, they can be
mm,
like a range of things. So there are NPCs who are dangerous to you and they are marked as threats and they have specific
okay.
abilities they can use against you in what's called a tight spot. So this is like your equivalent of combat or a really stressful situation. But you also have a straight up list of threats that you can roll on and encounter different kinds of monsters, different kinds of dangerous situations, and then because my brain just was like, "That's not enough," I also added
Never
in,
enough.
"Never enough, never enough." You know my motto, but make it worse.
Yes.
So I've I've added in another 2 tables on top of that for what I call encounters and events. So these are encounters that are meant to, like, inspire dread, horror, give you the sense that something is not right in the town.
Mhm.
So whether that's it's probably too spoilery to sort of give too many examples, but whether
Yeah.
that's, animals behaving in ways they shouldn't or infrastructure and things moving around.
So, tell me about the flow of play. Like, what is a day or a night, I should say, in your radio host's life in Jubilation?
So most of your character's time will be spent at Jubilation radio station, where you'll be
Mhm.
using the prompts in the narrative guides to add aspects to the nightly broadcast. So you have voicemails, return callers, songs you can play, advertisements, horoscopes as well for the week,
Ooh.
where weird weather reports that are not strictly from your Jubilation as well. So
Oh,
your average day, I call it your nightly ritual. So
okay.
you go through a very common, I think, solo gameplay loop. You establish your scene, determine what your goals, obstacles, challenges are going to be, whether you need to take action, what the result of the action is, recording it, and then kind of starting that loop again. So it's a pretty
Mhm.
common setup for solo games. There's quite a few great names for these. And also, you can kind of find similar things like with 5-act horror or 3-act structures and plays. there's kind of this setup, rise, and fall. But the key point for a lot of these solo games is that the loop needs to be tailored to you and your specific experience. So while I have given a pretty detailed framework within the actual book itself, it's all about what is it your character wants to achieve? What is it your presenter desires? What is it they want to go out and do? Whatever it is, you should be spending the majority of your time at the radio station because that is your place of employment. But I have also done a few fun things, particularly with the resting and healing mechanics, where if you get yourself into too many scrapes and you have to take time off work to heal, that has social ramifications for you because everyone knows you weren't on air. And there's
Yeah.
a little bit of a sense that, you aren't just operating in isolation, although you are isolated. Particularly so there's a map of the town which I've done, and it pretty much towards the start of the book, and you can also see just sort of how far out I've kind of placed the radio station itself. So when you are at the radio station, there is that sense that you are very in Jubilation, but also quite separate from Jubilation. You're far
Mhm.
away from the kind of more urban areas, and I say urban, it is technically speaking, it's a very small town. And on
Yeah.
paper, the population is under 3,000 people, but that changes every night. So, these things will sort of move around a bit for your character. And one of the other fun mechanics, which is taken directly from the pass key system and then sort of tailored for my game, are called complications. So if you fail, or if you leave it up to the dice, which is a luck test when you're making an action, if you fail, you get a certain amount of complications depending on your results.
Okay.
If you spend effort points, which are based on your character's statistics or stats, which you sort of roll at the beginning of the game, they also guarantee a certain amount of success, but will attract complications as well. And those are a kind of finite resource. If you spend all of them, you will fall unconscious. And if you don't rest
Oh.
the night, you can't recover any either. So you may quickly find yourself having to leave things up to the dice if you haven't watched your resources well enough. Uh,
Okay.
Complications, there are, what was that? At least off the top of my head, 36 different
Ooh.
complications. Your character, yeah, and they're all done as roll tables. So the general setup I've got to try and ensure like a good mathematical spread, you'll roll 1d6 to determine which table you'll be rolling on, and
Okay.
1d6 for the result on that table. So there's
Nice.
a good chance of you getting a nice spread of complications. These are twists, narrative obstacles. My personal favorite one, because I have introduced a phone as a piece of equipment in the game. Your phone runs out of power even when charged. And
Okay.
you can have kind of narrative prompts like this to help figure out, oh, what kind of goes wrong as a result of something
Mhm.
happening. Um, so personally, I love the complications a lot. When in
Mhm.
doubt, I've also put in a yes no oracle, which is a great thing for a solo game where if you have a yes or no question about the scene, does my character know this person? Have I been here before? Should I go to this place or not? Kind of thing. You can roll on the oracle. It gives you a no, no, but, no, and, yes, yes, and yes, but
Mhm.
type setup and can kind of nudge you one way or the other for your narrative. I've also got like tables with word prompts. And possibly my
Mhm.
favorite playtesting story was someone's entire narrative came out of using that prompt table and they got a word to do with Ica and sticky. And they then
Ooh.
went on to create this absolutely fantastic eldritch narrative about an ichor that was kind of taking them over. And
Okay.
that is exactly the sort of thing I live for with these games.
Uh-huh, absolutely. And it's always really fun getting that feedback from your play testers and just players in general. Like with my one-page games and stuff, especially, I'll have people come up to me and tell me what chaos happened. in their games, and it's always so much fun and so fascinating how people take what you've written and just twist it and reinterpret it in ways that maybe you never would have expected.
And
Mhm.
honestly, I have to thank my playtesters as well, because the character that has become the example in the book and who I'm actually doing the voice of for the updates for the campaign, Jamie
Mm.
Dano, was inspired by their choice of vice as impulse shopping. And I
Amazing.
loved it. I loved every
Mhm.
moment of it, them describing to me the way that this vice impacts their day to day and the choices they, excuse me, had to make, like, before they, like, go to work. Do I buy something? Do I not? Do I
Mhm.
and that has what has inspired the example character in the book and
Mhm.
the example character in the gameplay preview that's on my itch page as well. So, there are so many vices and so many different things you can do. And of course, like, the important thing is to remember it's not about gamifying real life addiction or real life
Yeah.
mental illness. This is more about what kind of wanton self destruction do you get up to satisfy your desires? What is it you
Mhm.
crave above all else? So, in Jamie's case, very much a character who believes they're owed things, they deserve nice things. Uh, and so they find it really hard to resist the urge to kind of get into that shopping spree. But of course, with the narrative impact, the more money they spend, that money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And I also just really love that because people think of vice, and of course they think of like gluttony and lust and all those other vices, like in general. But they also, it's usually those extremes, and like shopping, like impulsive shopping, is not something that people would immediately go to. So having that example is really great. One thing that I wanted to talk about as well, because I know that it's really important to both of us, is like accessibility. And like I know that like with the PDF and everything, making it extremely accessible is very important to you. So I wanted you to touch on that a little bit.
For those who haven't really spoken to me personally, haven't really spent a lot of time, possibly on my very tiny social media account, I am hard of hearing and I have a few other visible and invisible disabilities. And it is very deeply personal to me that my games are accessible. So, even down to when I was designing the map for the town, I have a really great color contrast app that I use to double check color contrast, make sure that is actually going to be workable for folks. I'm working with Casey and the Graphics Bandwagon, who is a local accessibility company in Australia, and they are remediating or rather reviewing all of my documents to make sure I've remediated them correctly, which means that they will be completely compatible with screen readers, which I'm extremely excited about. And that goes to, so I've got the main graphics PDF. I will have a plain text PDF as well with no graphics, but descriptions of the images. I have my early bird reward, which is a one-page little fun thing I will be posting an update about, hopefully soon, uh, as well as, oh, I believe that might actually be it. No, and the character sheet, of course. I was like, there's another
Yeah.
document. The character sheet is a single page form fillable document, but it is also designed to be compatible with screen readers. It can be both printed and filled in digitally. So all of the documents will be fully checked off by a professional, which I'm incredibly excited about. Usually I do a lot of the remediation myself, but I'd sort of factored a little bit into the budget here that I would be able to get a professional's review.
Amazing. I love that so much. Yeah, because there's times when you look at a game, and I'm not going to give any examples because I don't like to do that. But you sometimes you look at a game book and you're like, that is extremely inaccessible, or trying to use a screen reader and it just does not work, that kind of thing. So being able to make it so that the game is fully accessible to people, especially having the plain text version too, is really, really great. I should get on that with my games. uh, with the plain text version, of course. But yeah, so oh, one other thing, completely changing the topic now. So one other thing that I was thinking about, and this is me being an actual play performer and everything, and writing my own solo games and such, is you're talking about how it's so important. Like the main aspect of this is your character in the radio station. And I was just thinking about the kind of idea of found footage slash like journal entries and things like that. It would be so cool to have audio clips of the player actually being on the radio, so to speak, and they are like dealing with all of these things that are happening. And then like I'm just picturing like a website where you have all these audio clips, and then you have like journal entries of them writing about their day or their night, whatever it might be. Just having all of these little bits and pieces, and the idea of it makes me really excited.
I long for that, honestly. I've been investigating ways I could potentially set something like that up because I love the idea that people would be able to share their broadcasts.
Hmm.
Because one of the mechanics I kind of toyed with, and I think like I might have to save it for a future expansion, it's called layers. So the idea with the kind of layers mechanic is that you are in your jubilation. There may be presenters experiencing the same sort of things or perhaps different to you are in another jubilation. And I
Ooh.
loved the idea of presenters being able to share broadcasts with each other. So, say you have a complication that you lose your way, which is one of the results you can get. You are late to work, but suddenly you hear the radio come on and it's not you, but
Oh,
everyone
I
in
love that.
Mhm. is, of course, acting like, oh no, that's normal. That's fine.
I love that so much, especially because one game that I have, which let me look at uh, no, Kokoro. It's based off of Kiki's Delivery Service, but you're a witch going to a new town, all of that. It's a solo game, but you can play it multiplayer, where you're like exchanging letters with the other witches and stuff. I really love the idea of like maybe sending messages into the void for these other radio hosts, being like warnings and things like that.
It would be amazing because then, people also have the opportunity to add monstrous things to the world, and they're heavily encouraged
Mhm.
to do that with the system. So, the idea that, you could share your horrors, and of course, a big mystery for your character is what happened to your predecessor? Why is the
Mm.
position vacant? Because you're in a not in a great spot when Jubilation
Yeah.
Radio reaches out to you. You don't have any other options at this point. You like to say you're a victim of circumstance, not of your poor decision making. So you find yourself here and you ask the question, oh, so why is the position? Whatever happened to the last guy?
Yeah.
And you can just see the change come over people. They don't want to talk about it, but someone's equipment is in that FM studio. You're using someone's headphones. And
Mhm.
so there's a little bit of a sense of like, if you wanted to, you could try and solve this mystery with someone else if they're also playing the game, because you do get history handouts in your narrative guides. So I've done 10 specific handouts where you can get different information from different NPCs about what has happened. But this information can be tailored to your game. It's very much an example of, if you go with this scene, you can, but someone else could tell you this information. Someone could give it to you as a call. Like there's all kinds of ways you could factor it into your life.
Mhm. And so this is me, like, just getting ideas for when I get to play this because I'm absolutely backing this, just FYI.
Thank you.
But, like, I'm imagining that, oh, well, the previous host didn't leave. They're just in an
Oh,
alternate version of Jubilation somehow, and, I love the idea of you come into work one night for the radio, and the headphones are still warm from someone else wearing them.
that is amazing. And honestly, that gets me excited for reasons I can't say because of spoilers, but I will say the first history handout happens when you're in a tight spot. So you learn
Okay.
your first bit of information when you face one of the more dangerous threats in the game for the first
Mm,
time. And they're a threat that's very specific to the radio station. So
okay.
it will be quite fun to see how people take that. But yes, your idea just gets me so excited.
Amazing. So we have 46, we have a bajillion roll tables and handouts and things like this. Generally speaking, what is the playtime of this game?
So I think it depends kind of how long you want it to go for. It is very much a
Hmm.
game that's not about winning so much as
Yeah.
surviving for as long as possible. There are death mechanics built into the game. So whether
Hmm.
that's like a narrative death, your story ends here, or whether it's literal death, you get dragged off by the mob or an angry mob or something else unfortunate happens to you. Uh, so you could have I have had some people do very, very quick play tests where they were kind of skimming through it just to get a feel for different characters, different things in the world.
Hmm.
And then I've had other people just really kind of sink into it. Because I am a huge fan of narrative games, when was playtesting it myself, that honestly took me over a month because I was trying to spread it out as possible. And
Yeah.
I will say if you want to do that, you would have to reduce the amount of danger your character experiences on a day-to-day basis. So
Mm.
I also tend to go a bit hard mode. So my character was like hanging in by a thread, had gained a danger at the hospital because I'd been to the hospital so many times,
Oh,
which is,
jeez.
of course, a mechanic I have in the game where if you end up at the hospital more than twice, you attract a dangerous NPC. And
Ah.
few things like that kind of built into the game. So, very much depends how long you want to get into it, but I have very deliberately designed it to be picked up and put down. Like, if you
Mm.
want to do a really quick scene, maybe you just want to use one thing, you could do a scene at the radio station, roll on one table, add one item. And the point is, you
Mhm.
should have one thing you're adding to the broadcast per scene.
Okay. So, this is a game that is longer. It's a little bit kind of like it can be a one shot or it can be a campaign for yourself, basically.
Very
Okay.
much so, and very much depends on if you're like me and you go hard mode or whether you are a character who has greater self-preservation.
No, but I really like that because you can really tailor it and adapt it to your own play style as well. And like for me, being a pro GM, having a solo journaling game or voice recording and things like that is really important. It's the reason why I personally write so many of them because I want something to play for myself too. That's not for an audience, you know?
And it's one of the great things I think about horror is you're bringing your own
Hmm.
distinct brand to it. I have added a
Yeah.
lot of different horror touch points, so the threats also cover a lot of different kinds of horror to try and invoke different
Mm-hmm.
kinds of experiences. But it's all about what is the horror you want to see in the setting? What is the
Mm-hmm.
threat you want to explore? You are very much the one driving this whole twisted narrative, and you get to say how thorny it becomes, how like brittle, how dangerous it becomes. whether you befriend NPCs, whether you have nemesis, that is very much up to you. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways you can kind of make it your own.
Well, and speaking of it being horror, of course, content warnings and things like that, what are the things that are like visible on the page versus you can open this up to interpretation?
So at the very beginning of the book, I have made sure to put content warnings and a few bits
Hmm.
of explanation, particularly around the vice mechanics, so that people are
Hmm.
sort of forewarned what it's about and making sure people are using safety tools when they need them. Pretty strong themes include body horror, presence of armed guards, use of insects and insectoids, dead bodies, death, a lot of voyeurism type behaviors, stalking, supernatural manipulation, loss of autonomy, control, things that, some people might say are a bit of a staple of the horror, but the fact is,
Hmm.
you want these front and center so that when people look at the content warnings, they get an overall sense about whether or not they want to engage in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that is always really important to share, especially like in general, having content warnings are really important, but especially in horror, because I feel like consent is even more important and awareness of content warnings is even more important in the horror genre than any other, because we want to explore these elements safely.
And I think a lot of people misunderstand that and think safety tools are actually going to take the horror out of the situation. And to those kind of people, I would sort of explain safety tools are there so that you can fully relax into the experience,
Hmm.
needing to hold anything back. So
Yeah.
there's a difference between fear and trauma as well, which I think people often might conflate these two things. When you know your boundaries aren't going to be crossed, you can actually fully immerse yourself in the experience and let yourself feel it, knowing you're just going to enjoy it rather than constantly being on guard, thinking, am I about to be hurt? Which is very, very different to, ooh, that shocked me, or I got a rush of adrenaline from that versus like actual harm.
Hmm. Absolutely. Like an example that I can give from my experience running Candela Obscura, there was that three-part series I did on Horde of Tales a while back. That was one of the episodes became my module Carnival of Dreams. And
Such a good
because,
question.
yeah, but because we had all of our safety tools in place and everything, I was, sorry, let me just check. Yeah. So I was able to just fully commit to the bit of what is your character most afraid of right now and building on that. And also in that three-part series, one of the characters, her backstory was that she was almost the last victim of basically the equivalent of Jack the Ripper,
Mm,
who was the wolf, and she's Ruby, so you get the vibe.
nice.
But because she gave me that backstory on a silver platter, I fully incorporated him into that three-part series, and he was the villain of the entire thing, and was like this bleed monster and everything. But we all had those safety tools in place, so I knew that it was a safe place to incorporate this villain and that he would be fully embraced with our
Uh,
narrative.
I absolutely, absolutely love that. And I will say, I feel like that's one of the strengths of solo gameplay is that you
Mhm.
have full control. So if for any, say you are playing Midnight in Jubilation, you think, oh, I've pushed myself a bit too hard
Mhm.
there, you are always welcome to step away. This is why, I say you are in control of this narrative. You can step away, use the safety tools as needed, come back and re engage in a way that better suits you. The point
Mhm.
is to experience a narrative about flawed people in a dark, uncaring kind of world. It's not
Mhm.
about bringing up your past traumas. It's not about uh, sort of grinding yourself into the dirt trying to get through a story. It should be about
Mhm.
what compels you, what inspires you, what gives you delicious chills, what of the horror makes you want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, if there's I've done this with my horror stuff. If there is a prompt or an element that could be potentially triggering, you can just skip over that. You can change what it is, all of that. You don't have to incorporate it into the game that you play, especially because you're playing solo.
Exactly. And I like to think, and this is why I've actually called them narrative guides rather than
Hmm.
straight up, these are just the roll tables you have to use.
Yeah.
The idea behind all of the guides, and I think at my last count, there was a little over 44 pages worth of them in the book.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and yet all my playtesters said I need more tables. So that was pretty funny. I thought, "Oh, I probably put too many in here," but no. Uh, so, this is why for the stretch goals, I've included one of the first stretch goals at $600 because I say 600 Australian. My funding goal
Hmm.
is 5 million. 600, you'll get an additional roll table for voicemails. So you'll get another 6 voicemails you can play at the studio. You'll get, I think I said 700 was another 7 callers. And when I say callers, these
Okay.
are recurring calls. So when you
Okay.
see the callers, their narrative evolves over time and you get different
Ooh.
information from over time. And some of them have prompts for you where if you don't do something or if you don't give them the correct advice, it has pretty drastic consequences for their lives. So you aren't just a passive recipient. You actually have the ability
Mhm.
to influence these people's lives in pretty fortunate or unfortunate ways. Um, but yeah, like if there is any kind of prompt that people don't like, you are never obliged to use it. You can change it, you can skip it, you can roll again.
Yeah.
The point is to build a narrative that you gel with because playing games should never feel like a chore. It should feel like a bit
No.
of an escape. And while this is an escape to like a dark dimension, it is
Mhm.
still like an escape.
Absolutely, and it's, a safe place to have that kind of like, momentary thrill kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Okay. Very cool. So, I think that we're nearing the end of this author talk, but please tell me, where can people back your project and win?
So I have my teaser page live now. So if you hop onto Pocketopia 2026 on BackerKit, you will be able to see me listed as Midnight and Jubilation amongst the list of projects. Interestingly, you should also be able to Google me. If you Google Midnight and Jubilation BackerKit, you might actually get my itch preview page, which I've
Interesting.
noticed. So you can also jump from there to the teaser page. And
Mhm. I'll
the
also be
camp
providing a link.
thank you. You're the
Yeah.
best. And yeah, we go live on May 7, 10 a.m. PDT, which I think is like 3 a.m. May 8 my time. So I will be having a very either sleepless night or early morning out of sheer anticipation. We'll find out.
Mhm.
And if folks want to find me as well, because I have links to it on my BlueSky, I am Dorian Blackwood, all one word. Dorian is in the picture of Dorian Gray. Blackwood is in Algernon Blackwood. Yes, I am that nerd. And you can find me on Blue.
Very cool. Well, I believe that is where we will end this for today. So, thank y'all so much for watching, for listening to us chatting about this awesome new game. And I will go ahead and end the stream here. Click on the links in the chat or in the description, depending on if you're on Twitch or YouTube, and we will see y'all next, whenever that may be, on Backer Kit and whatnot. So hope everyone has a lovely day. Goodbye.